私は魂を選定する者。私と共に行く気はないか。バルキリープロファイル、Lenneth.
Hey devoted fans! Are you ready for another fun-filled episode about a role-playing game that is remote?
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Okay then! I look forward to our next random encounter. What? What do you want? I still have to do a review? Fine, how about Valkyrie Profile? That game's pretty rare, isn't it? And I rarely hear anyone talk about it these days. Oh crap, but it's so expensive. Wait. Let me guess. There's a PSP remake? And I am gold. Valkyrie Profile was originally released on the PlayStation in 2000 by Enix. It was received moderately well, but it had a limited release, meaning that finding a PS1 copy is kind of rare. However, when a sequel, Valkyrie Profile Silmeria, was to be released in late 2006, Sqare Enix had to hype it up by re-releasing the original game. So, being the dedicated and hard-working company they are, they leapt into action by porting the game, well, just chucking in some CGI cutscenes and a few other small things, without changing any graphics or voice acting. Whatever, as long as we get the game without having to sell any children this time. I finally have enough for Suikoden 2. It's okay, Timmy, you were made in China, so going back there to work shouldn't be that bad. This remake is what I'm reviewing today. Valkyrie Profile Lenneth for the PlayStation Portable. Valkyrie Profile is a game based off Norse mythology, kind of like Riviera, as you play as a Valkyrie who sends Einherjar to Valhalla for Odin to fight in Ragnarok. For those of you not versed in Norse mythology, I really envy you for not wasting your precious time. Also, this means that you basically play as God's bitch, who has to find souls worthy to fight in a war in the afterlife. You play the game as Lenneth, a Valkyrie who finds worthy human souls across the world in order to battle the enemies of gods. The goal of the game is to recruit Einherjar in time for the final battle at the end of the game, but it's implied that you aren't exactly being told everything, as Lenneth seems to be quite an enigma herself. That's supposedly all you get in terms of story. That is, if you get the regular ending, but man will that get a rant later on. This game is very unique for an RPG, and now that I think about it, pretty complicated. So let me explain how it works. The game is divided into 8 chapters, and subdivided into about 24 periods. At the start of each chapter, you get a checklist of what type of warriors old Odin is looking for, and each chapter you must use your godlike powers to hear the tragic problems of those pathetic mortals around you to decide where you need to go. This is what it basically goes like. Why did Mass Effect 3 have such a shitty ending? Oh man, the 3DS has such a weak library of games. Nintendo, get off your asses and give us something better. Get out of my life! Jeez, our world is depressing. Anyway, you fly over to an area, which I clearly have too much fun doing, then watch a long story sequence where a new character is introduced and then recruited. You better enjoy these mini stories because that's about all the game offers in terms of that whole troublesome characterization and character development garbage. Anyway, you also visit dungeons or towns to complete tasks, and condition the hero values of your soldiers by fighting with them and digitally making them not douchebags anymore. Yes, you spend points that change the personality of your character, apparently. Wow. If only it was that easy in real life. Before the chapter ends, you have to send some of your virtuous warriors to Valhalla. This basically means that you won't be able to use them until the end of the entire game. but with 24 playable characters, it won't be too much of a hassle. Visiting anywhere will cost you period points, and once all your periods have been spent, you return to Valhalla for a quick evaluation of your progress and the characters you sent to fight. Then the process starts again until the final battle at the end of the 8th chapter. As unique as it all was, I have to say that this game gets pretty monotonous, as you often revisit the same places to grind and such, and the chapters definitely don't feel very distinguished from each other. As you can tell, Valkyrie Profile is pretty unique in its non-linear RPG progression towards a final goal, and that makes it actually pretty reminiscent of games like Persona 3 or 4 in a way. I like that constant and ominous reminder that the final war was fast approaching, and it adds some tension and urgency to the gameplay. The problem here is that there really isn't too much to see in this world. Like, a lot of the explorations of towns just feel like a waste of time because you can't really shop or anything like a traditional RPG. Items are just kinda bought from your main menu. Also, exploring wastes valuable period points, so it's a non-linear RPG that discourages and penalizes actually exploring. Not the best combination. You spend a lot of the time exploring dungeons in Valkyrie Profile, and this game gives you a surprising amount of moves for an RPG. First of all, dungeon crawling feels more like a platformer, as you jump, slide, and slash away to move ahead. You can also see enemies on screen, and you have to slash them first in order to get the first move in battle. You know, that's something that always bothers me about RPG protagonists. They instigate fights and then claim they're the ones who are right.
Stop talking about it. There was just no reasoning with him. No doubt you're impressed. My powers are an amazing sight to behold.
Damn it! You're an asshole! Fuck! What's wrong with you? God!
You cut me into pieces.
I was fucking kidding! Fuck you! You're an asshole!
Okay, enough of that. Back to the dungeons. I really liked how they handled the controls here, as you have a lot of neat abilities like shooting crystals and sliding that aren't really necessary most of the time, but you can be really creative with the selection you're given. There is a lot of dungeon crawling in this game, and the battle system makes it all a blast actually, but more on that later. An issue is that the dungeons themselves aren't very impressive in terms of diversity. They're very maze-like and rather bland in their execution. Also, they give you all of those neat moves, but you never really use most of them to do anything innovative, and it just feels flat out lazy by the developers. There are also some puzzles thrown here or there, but they're so tedious and they're clearly just there to artificially lengthen an already 35-hour or so game. Now, I usually talk about the characters much earlier in my reviews, but what you've probably picked up on is that Valkyrie Profile isn't much for story, which is a pretty huge problem for an RPG. This extends to the characters, and I can tell you that the characterization in this game is pitiful. There are only a few memorable characters, but it's quite clear that the characters are not the focus of the game, and this is a heavy strike. Let me explain. Lenneth is the protagonist, but she barely shows any emotion throughout a good portion of the story. She's a holy being after all, but god, does that make the game feel sterile. There's nothing I could say about her or any of these characters. The individual recruitment stories were well done, as characters get emotional investment quickly, but it fades because of the anemic and downright dismal amount of character interaction throughout the game, and the fact that very few characters are actually connected to the plot. This is a deadly flaw. Once again, think of Persona 3. It's important that you play as characters like Junpei or Yukari, so that you grow to like them and watch them develop. Controlling these characters is emotionally investing for the player because you want to see them succeed and overcome hardships, and that's where all the tension can come from story-driven battles. However, I had more emotions for my dental floss than for 90% of the characters of Valkyrie Profile. Yes, I know they get a strong story to start, but if they don't get any more screen time or development, then how's that rewarding to the player? And don't tell me they develop when you see them in evaluation. That simplicity just does not count.
No, the morality of man is not a simple construct. It has layers and layers of complexity. Godspeed, you magnificent son of a bitch!
By now, you're probably wondering, okay John, you've addressed a lot of the flaws in this game, but what makes it worth playing? Well, that's easy. The battle system. Man, is the battle system in Valkyrie Profile fantastic. It manages to be unique by mixing action RPG and standard RPG elements, and easy to learn but difficult to master. Put simply, it kicks ass, but allow me to explain. Basically, you use 4 characters who are each mapped to one of the 4 main PlayStation buttons. During a turn, pressing each button will allow you to attack with that character, but the trick is that you can attack with several characters at the same time in order to break defenses and to raise hell in general. On top of this, getting combos will allow you to pull off some fantastic extra attacks and really pile on the damage. You also get a great variety in terms of the characters, and they all have their own individual attacks, stats, and weapons, which means that you can experiment a lot to find out which works. All of this, along with your standard items, magic, and more, makes the battle system and battles really never feel like a chore. However, I said the system was fantastic, not perfect. A lot of the mage characters seem to play the same, and too many characters just flat out suck. And the battles also get maybe a bit too difficult later on, even with a good amount of grinding. However, these flaws are definitely overshadowed by the good parts, as the battle system is probably the best aspect of the game, in my opinion. Item and skill micromanagement was also interesting, and believe it or not, quite enjoyable. If you're the type of gamer who likes to micromanage and strategize, then you found the right game. Conversely, if you hate micromanagement or you're a newbie to RPGs, then this game definitely isn't for you. Aside from dealing with a large roster of characters, you get many skills to keep track of, equipment, and more to deal with. Usually I complain about managing these types of things in an RPG, but Valkyrie Profile manages to make it all pretty easy to do if you understand how the system works. So we've gone over the story, gameplay, exploration, characters, battling, and item management, and by now you know that Valkyrie Profile does many things right, but maybe too many things wrong. The biggest issues here is the non-linearity of the game, which actually may be one of its biggest flaws, and kind of held the game back from being another classic and timeless PS1 RPG. The game has 3 endings. The best is A, then B, and then the worst, C. The B ending is constantly ridiculed and referred to as the bad ending, and the C ending is what you get if you basically ignore everything Odin says because you're too damn cool to help fight a world-changing war. To get the A ending, the real ending, you have to do a bunch of really specific things at certain points in the game. But does the game tell you what you should do? Well, of course not. Why would I expect that? I played the game through for 36 hours, thinking that the story was pretty pathetic. But I didn't know that I was only seeing the roots of a plot and nothing else. I missed 80% of the story, even though I played for 36 hours. That's inexcusable, and absolutely unforgivable for a role-playing game, which is all about the story. Just because I was busy going through the game, not exploring much because of the time limit, and missing completely random and seemingly unpredictable things, I don't get the most of the story. I missed so much. I even saw that you got to fight that asshat god, Loki.
I've care how you speak. Loki is beyond reason, but he is of Asgard, and he is my brother.
He killed 80 people in 2 days.
He's adopted.
Yeah, I had to throw an Avengers joke in there. Anyway, Valkyrie Profile left a really bitter taste in my mouth after I figured that all out. But, thanks to the wonders of modern technology, I have seen the proper ending. And getting that ending is the only way to get the most out of the story in Valkyrie Profile. The sad part is that the story was actually pretty good, maybe just a little crazy. I really don't know what the game developers were thinking. Maybe they were encouraging multiple playthroughs, but that's kind of unreasonable for a game this long. Again, this all goes back to the lack of direction and linearity in the game. I know everybody hates on Final Fantasy XIII because it's basically a hallway, but as a game designer, you have to put the player on the right track, especially if it's an RPG. Yeah, that feeling of freedom when you first saw the world map in Final Fantasy VII is something that's important, but the game gives you freedom within reasonable limits in order to progress through a pre-constructed story. Valkyrie Profile makes linearity in an RPG a terrible burden. So in short, if you want to experience this game right, then you have to use a walkthrough. Aside from the great battle system, the graphics and presentation were my favorite parts of the game. I really love the dark, gothic style they went with, and most locations of the game are detailed, memorable, and a treat for the eyes. I love the diverse settings, the choices of colors, and the morbid tone. It all just worked out so well and made the game incredibly memorable in that regard. Everything is aesthetically pleasing, but I did find that the sprites seemed to be a little pixelated, probably because of the PSP screen. I also felt that the CGI cutscenes were beautiful, but there weren't too many of them, and I didn't feel like they added too much to the overall experience. Music did its job, but not too many memorable tracks were found here. It's similar to the tracks in Tales games, where the songs are all upbeat with guitar and drums along with fantasy instruments. They're all songs you want to bang your head to.
Excellent!
So the songs did their job, but they didn't really go above and beyond. The game also has voice acting, which wasn't that bad. The only thing was that most of the voice actors were actually from other things like Pokemon as well. As awesome as that was, it was pretty distracting to me.
Team Rocket, blast off at the speed of light!
Surrender now or prepare to fight!
That's right!
When it comes down to it, Valkyrie Profile is definitely not a bad game, but it's not for everyone. The battle system, unique gameplay, and visual style makes it a quality game worth playing for experienced RPG fans, but I just can't ignore the lack of story, character development, characterization, the monotony, the whole ending fiasco, everything. The lack of characterization and character development is my biggest problem, because it makes the game feel sterile, like it lacks personality, and just doesn't really motivate me to play it. I know that it must sound like I really didn't enjoy this game, but I don't regret playing it at all. The flaws are all damaging, but they can be overlooked if you play with a guide of some sort. That would fix many of the problems that plague the experience. I would only recommend this game if you consider yourself good at RPGs, and if you can be patient enough to learn how everything works, and how to deal with the crap it throws at you. In terms of which version to buy, you'll probably end up getting the PSP version, which isn't bad, of course, aside from the lack of additional content, but the only thing is it doesn't really feel like a portable game, because the save points are kind of far in between, and also the story sequences can drag out pretty long. In my opinion, Valkyrie Profile, or Valkyrie Profile Lenneth, just misses the mark as a classic RPG, but I still think it's worth playing if you see it for a decent price or if it looked kind of interesting. Well, that's all for now. I'll see you on the next Remote RPGs, where we look at an overlooked 8-bit classic.
Excellent!